Hello, good morning, good evening, maybe good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Piscaer. I'm joined by my good friend, Ather. Um, and we were talking after seeing Cloudfield 810 a couple of weeks ago. We were kind of discussing, talking about one of the presentations we saw by Scality on data sovereignty, um, which was, it was a weird presentation in the sense that it was a very non-technical topic, performed in a very non-technical way at a otherwise very technical event. So it was a nice, fresh breeze of new approach, novel approach. So I liked the topic. I liked the way they were talking about it. And it's a topic that's always interesting to me because a, I'm not an expert, but b, I do know a thing or two about it. So it's always interesting to me when they kind of stray from the usual. Data sovereignty is something you need to be mindful of. Ask your cloud provider, and then that's kind of it, right? And so after we were talking about one of the questions you asked during the presentation, um, and let's dive into that. So maybe repeat your question as kind of a starter for diving into it, and then we'll pick it up.
Yes. So the question I asked was that given data sovereignty is so important to so many organizations now, because data is the new oil, as they say, it's very precious. Then how do we control the data as to where it goes, especially when it exits your data center? So even if you put some controls in, because data formats and storage systems are very prescriptive in how they've been architected. So without making any fundamental changes, and those changes, which are then universal, how do you control the data? And once it exits your environment, is it a goal that is unachievable? So that's the question I asked. And I think given the presentation, I think there was a realization at that point, and that reply basically was such that if it exits your environment, then pretty much you are relying on the external organization, wherever your data lands or goes through, to ensure that the path, but also the destination, is secure for the future. And you basically rely on that, be it and more so actually on the public cloud side of things. And this is why, like you quite rightly mentioned and point out, that organizations need to be mindful as to where their data ends up and have a plan for it and realization of exactly what the cloud provider is doing. And can you accept what it is now or will be in the future to allow your data to go and reside there?
Yeah, I mean, that's where cloud and managed services as a whole are. I don't think we're technically mature enough with the way we store data right now that we can make those guarantees on different classifications of your data. And I remember companies like Data Gravity way back who basically integrated e-discovery type of solutions into a storage layer. And I was a lot of I was a fan of that concept just because it solved a problem where we usually kind of slap the solution on top of the existing problem, but never solve the fundamental problem underneath, which is, how does a random storage device know what data is being stored? How does it know whether it's, personally identifiable information or sensitive medical data or credit card data or, whatever type of data that you might want to protect more than a regular Linux disk image. So how does a public cloud know that? How does Scality for that matter know what data is being stored? And I think that's where the industry hasn't reached a level of maturity yet, that we have that metadata built into the product and built into the storage and have it stored as part of the data that you're storing. And if I remember correctly, that was more or less your point as well, saying, why how can we even guarantee or begin to guarantee anything if we're storing the metadata separately from the data itself, and if that's not a single bundle?
That's
Um,
correct.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder where the future is in that respect.
Yes, and that's the thing, because and encryption, obviously, encryption of data makes it even more difficult to decipher all of those things if you're starting to mine your data. And again, if you don't have a common standard, in absence of that, how do you ensure that that happens? But also taking the point further, so one of the points mentioned in that presentation was that Microsoft, because of the Cloud Act, may not in the future be able to give you guarantees on data sovereignty unless you are a US citizen. So I personally wasn't aware of that, actually, which was surprising to me as well, but also got me thinking that even if you go to that public cloud and reside due to whichever public cloud it might be, today, whatever the policies are, as a result of global politics or geographic situations, those policies might change. If that changes, what does it mean for your future cloud, data residency? I already know about some regions which traditionally weren't as concerned about their data storage, but now are actually moving back down to on-premises just because of the reasons that data sovereignty concerns. So what does that mean for your organization? So that's an interesting point that everyone should think about.
Well, especially because in those situations you are migrating once up to the cloud, and then after your realization of the specific limits and limitations, you have to migrate back down. And migrations, on at least on a bigger scale, are far from cheap, but they also, and that's maybe the bigger point, they also distract from the act of doing actual business. They are, in a sense, they are toil, they are work that has to be done but isn't primary to the business you're trying to run. And so the more of that type of work you do, the worse it is for your bottom line. So I do wonder whether we are already in a state, and asking the question means answering the question. I don't think we are mature enough that we are able to figure out legislation and laws globally to solve for these issues, because Microsoft, in the end, in this example, has they have to choose which law system do we primarily abide to, and they obviously chose the U.S. law, and that's logical. They are a U.S. company, which brings me to an adjacent topic, and we'll save that for another time. But Gaia X, running a European cloud, creating a European cloud, is for those reasons immensely interesting to me. Not because of technology; they'll run on cool but commodity technology, hopefully. But it is interesting because we'll see a next level of maturity in legislation and figuring out data sovereignty, data escrow. How do big companies abide to European law or maybe international law? So we'll have to see and wait.
Yes, I'll also be keeping a watching brief on that, because all these concepts are very important, especially with government organizations, for example, where national policy gets in the way, or you have to protect your country first, right? So all of those laws and principles take precedence. So I'm sure that all different regions and countries will be following suit. So yeah, definitely something to look at. But that's why I think the viewers should go and watch the video, because it was a fascinating talk. And this was one of the examples where sometimes in a technical chat you think about, oh, get to the point, and the meat of the presentation. But in that particular case, we didn't mind the history being told before that, because it was all very nicely joined up and interesting.
Agreed. Yep. So go and watch that video. Techfield8.com, Cloudfield810 is the event. We were at. Scality was the presenting company. Go watch that data sovereignty video. It was interesting to us. Hopefully, it'll be interesting to you as well. For now, I want to thank Ather for being here, and we'll catch you in a next video.